welcome to another episode of World of Tanks with Ungainly Titan. And now's the time to have a look at the Frostbite Grizzly M4 Sherman, or the M4 Sherman Frostbite Grizzly. I'm not sure what way you're supposed to say it. I generally refer to it as the Sherman Grizzly, because I don't ever remember the Frostbite bit. Canada's cold, but I don't know if it's that cold, is it? I mean, I don't know. I've never lived there, really. I have a cousin that lives there. But anyway, that is beside the point. This video, or at least the footage for this video, has been sitting on my drive for about a month, because I got this thing a month ago or more. I picked it up in a loot box around the time I sold the Ripper and the T14, and then I got the T14 and this thing back. I actually think this is the better exchange. I think the T14 is complete rubbish, and I would get rid of it again as soon as I can. But this thing, I've played it a few times, and it's not complete rubbish. It's not the greatest tier 5 tank in the world, but it's not the worst, and it's perfectly serviceable crew trainer, I think. It's actually probably a better crew trainer at this stage than what used to be my go-to crew trainer for the British line, which was the tier 5 heavy tank, the Excelsior, which is the British version of the T14. But it had slightly worse armor on the sides and slightly better gun. In my opinion, it had a better gun. The thing about the T14 was that the gun was not bad. It was around the same gun you get in the Churchill 3, I think. Similar gun handling. And I quite enjoyed it, but the Excelsior has really been power creeped a little, to the point where it's now on the difficult to play side. You can still do well in it, but it is much more difficult to play compared to before, whereas before you kind of drive out, pull the trigger, keep it pressed, auto aim, just drive around. You won't do that now. What you actually have is a stock Sherman. It's practically identical to stock Sherman. The numbers are not quite exactly the same, but they're close enough that its performance is going to be... You're hardly going to notice. I think the only real thing you might notice is that this thing would probably be a little bit better oomph in the engine. It's got around the same top speed, but it'll probably... It feels like it will reach the top speed quicker, and it'll probably be a bit quicker on the slopes. It's a slightly heavier tank than the stock Sherman, but it's got a better engine, but not a whole lot of a better engine. It's got roughly the same top speed. Gun is, again, practically identical. 75mm gun, 12 degrees of gun depression, and it's the 12 degrees of gun depression you really need to be exploiting in this tank. The armour isn't going to hold up very well against a lot of stuff at tier equivalent, simply because the Shermans just don't. The kind of tanks they meet up with regularly in World of Tanks are quite capable of punching through the frontal armour, particularly at the higher end of the frontal armour. The cast bit around the bottom is actually quite strong, but the gun on the Sherman, the 75mm, the stock gun on the Sherman, is going to struggle against some of the tougher opponents that you run into. So you'd have to probably use premium ammunition in those cases, and you probably still want to be shooting weak spots even with premium ammunition. So if you're running into KVs or T150s or stuff like that, you want to know where to place your shots. Otherwise they will bounce. And tanks like the T-34 is going to bounce Sherman 75mm rounds. However, you know, if you know where to place your rounds and your gun's good enough to be able to place rounds, you've got a high rate of fire. So you exploit the cover, you exploit the reverse slopes. It's not an immobile tank, but it's not the most mobile tank either. So you need to watch the situation around you. If you need to bail out, you need to do it in time. If you hang around too long, you can't drive your way out of trouble with this thing if people are chasing you, because anything that's chasing you is more than likely to be faster than you and more agile, and you're going to lose the race. So if you want to relocate, you relocate on time. But it's perfectly serviceable. It's nothing spectacular, nothing out of the ordinary, but a far superior tank to the Ripper, in my opinion, simply because the gun handling is so much superior. The gun handling of the Ripper lets it down. The gun handling of the penetration is woeful. The armor piercing ammunition is terrible, and the what you call it, heat on the Ripper isn't much better. And the bloom on the gun is just so huge, so that it's just very poor gun handling in this thing. Whereas in this tank, the gun handling is okay. You know, you'll manage. We've had a relatively decent game here, without doing anything special or spectacular, and that's, I think, the kind of game we're going to have in the tank. But if you want a tank for a crew trainer, that's what you want. You want a reasonably solid, consistent performance, so that you can be, you know, solid, persistent in the middle of the table or whatever, and you just rack up the experience points for your crews. And it'll do that job quite nicely. But it's not a tank I would buy in particular. But if you pick it up as in part of something else, then it's not a tank that I would sell either, you know, out of my garage, just because. So we came number 3 by experience. We picked up a 2nd class mastery. Serviceable tank, serviceable performance. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please give it a like and a share. Feel free to comment. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you again soon.